legends from present in the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to What a Cartoon Movie, the podcast that's well worth your cussing money. I'm one of your hosts, the wild animal Bob Mackey, and this is an audio exploration of every animated movie ever. Who is here with me today, as always?
Currently on an all cider and cigarettes diet, Henry Gilbert.
And this month's podcast is all about the movie Fantastic Mr. Fox.
We take the shortcut or the scenic route?
Let's take the shortcut.
Oh, but the scenic route is so much prettier.
Okay, let's take the scenic route.
Great. It's actually slightly quicker anyway.
And yes, this month we're covering Fantastic Mr. Fox, which was Wes Anderson's first dabbling with the world of stop-motion animation, to my knowledge. And we thought this very autumnal movie would be the perfect choice to launch at the very end of October, just as fall is heating up or cooling down, perhaps.
You, I hope, are listening to this while looking at falling leaves and are surrounded by browns and reds and yellows and very little blue or green, as this film's color design also chooses.
Perhaps you're stealing from ugly British people?
Yes, as an American, of course, but please, if you're gonna kill the chickens, don't do it with your teeth. Don't.
Yeah, and make sure you're not being filmed or anything. I don't want to see this on Twitter later.
Though I guess they even eat toast that way, of ripping it all to shreds. So you can do that if you want, listener. I'll give you permission for that. I have been wanting to do. I'm a big Wes Anderson freak, and in and out, but I'm back in the zone, baby. And this film, I had always been thinking, like, man, I would love to cover his animated feature work, and now years into it, it's time finally to do it.
And what is our history with the movie, Henry? It sounds like you were there day one with your Fantastic Mr. Fox t-shirt on, front row seats.
I was, though this actually was the last one I saw in theaters for a little while of his films. So I didn't see his first film until DVD, but I did theatrically see Rushmore, The Royal Tenenbaums, Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, and then the Darjeeling Limited. And then I saw this one in theaters, and I did like it, but it was starting to feel a little samey to me. And then when his next one was announced, and it was like the all-child actor, not all-child actor cast, but a predominantly kid cast, Moonrise Kingdom, I was like, that was when I gave it a break. And then only after Grand Budapest Hotel came out, and people were telling me, like, this is his best movie, which I don't agree with that, but I do love it. That's when I finally gave it, came back to Wes. And now I've become a completist, and I have resumed watching all of his movies and have seen them all.
Yeah, this is the first time I've watched this film. And even though he is my doppelganger, according to some people, my take on Wes Anderson is, frankly, I'd like less Anderson. That's where I'm coming from. Now, here's the thing. I was talking about this with my wife as we were walking around today. And there is no way to either like or dislike Wes Anderson without seeming like a hipster. If you like him, people are like, oh, look at the hipster. He loves Wes Anderson. If you don't like him, oh, look at the hipster. He's too good for Wes Anderson. So I'm between a rock and a hard place here. And I will say I was with Wes Anderson, not for Bottle Rocket. I rented a Rushmore on VHS. I was like, that's pretty good. And then I watched Royal Tenenbaums, a movie people that really love. They love that film. And I kind of left me cold. And I thought, I'm good. I don't need any more of this director. And then the 2000s march on. He becomes bigger and bigger. Everybody is telling me to watch his movies. I'm not checking in very often. And in my later years in life, my middle age, I am going back to some Wes Andersons and saying, did I miss something? But no, he just kind of leaves me a little cold. Based on a lot of choices people really love him to make. And I know I'm not alone. And I'm trying to like him, and I understand he is not for me, but I appreciate and respect that he is able to have his own style and make whatever he wants. It helps that a billionaire is funding all of his movies. I'm glad billionaires are funding more than just conservative upstarts. They can also fund Wes Anderson as well. But Wes Anderson, not my cup of tea, though I did like this movie to some extent, I will say. The stop motion got me on board, but the Wes Anderson-y choices that some people delight in really grate on me at times. And any person who is of my ilk, we all have the same complaints. And I'll probably go over some of those in this podcast, but I don't want to belabor the point. Just know that this is not my thing.
You know, after I logged Asteroid City and was talking up so much, you saw it soon after, and you did. I have to agree with your point that Principal Skinner looking at the diorama is like, that is, I can totally understand feeling that way.
Yeah. My take is like Principal Skinner's, and I've used this joke a billion times to talk about Wes Anderson, kind of sterile, no real insight. You can appreciate the craftsmanship, but then you can also feel nothing based on it. And I was reading Matt Christman's review of this movie, and he was saying, Wes Anderson, he excels at sterile family dioramas, and that it really is a great way of putting it. I don't know, like, I guess I grew up working class. I'm fascinated by waspy characters to a certain extent, but at some point I want people to emote. To be fair, he's really good at depicting these emotionally distant characters, these characters where their wealth has alienated them from everybody else in many respects. And he does kind of tell the same stories over and over in terms of the themes he uses and the types of characters he uses.
Yeah, I'm stealing a thought from Will Sloan that I've heard him say a few times about the great film critic, and we've had him on the podcast. When he even starts to feel Anderson films feel a little samey, and I also was feeling slightly more empty with his most recent one, the Phoenician Scheme, which I did still like. But I think back to Will Sloan saying that, like, you watch one of these movies, like, jerk off motion, like another, like, beautifully filmed and shot original film by an auteur who gets to keep making his movies. Fuck off. It's like, I even just appreciate that, like, few people get to be Wes Anderson now.
Yes, yeah, I totally appreciate that. Although it makes me wish that more people who make things that I'm more into had the same privileges. But well, again, we'll talk about our thoughts about the movie. Obviously, this is going to be a very long podcast. But in my Letterboxd review, my main thoughts are I feel like the Wes Anderson style does kind of handcuff this movie. It cannot fully explore the heights of stop motion animation because it has to fit into, as our pal Matt Christman says in his review, the sterile family diorama. And for as much as I like how the movie looks, seeing the same choices repeated over and over for 90 minutes, I just am getting a little tired of it.
And, maybe this is a question better directed directly, Dina, but I wonder, who does she feel on the scale? Like, are you more Beck or more Wes Anderson in looks and appearance?
Oh, I don't know. I think maybe she would lean more towards Beck, but I'll let her weigh in the comments.
Well, Bob, too, when you were growing up, not only like, or a Wes Anderson viewer in youth and middle age, but what were you with a Roald Dahl reader as a kid?
Oh, I loved Roald Dahl. Actually, I never read this book because by the time I got around to seeing it, I thought maybe, this is a baby's book because it's so small. And actually, I took it out of the library and I read it today. It took 20 minutes to read, and that includes the time it took to heat up my coffee. But I really liked it. And I loved Quentin Blake's illustrations. Quentin Blake was, I guess he's still around. As of this recording, he's in his 90s. Miraculously still alive. He was Roald Dahl's artist. And I like the vibe here a lot more than what's going on in this movie. It's so funny that if you look at Quentin Blake's illustrations, if you've read any Roald Dahl book, you know what they look like. It is the exact opposite of what is happening in this very fussy, meticulous stop-motion film.
Yeah, they that actually came up in the history that I don't believe Wes Anderson was a Quentin Blake reader. He had different versions of this that had a different artist on them for different publisher. But the Quentin Blake is, I didn't read Fantastic Mr. Fox as a youth either, but his art style is like, that is what I imagine seeing on the page of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or Matilda, which I did read as a kid too.
Yeah, I loved Matilda. It did make me cry as a kid. And I love The Witches so much. The Jim Henson movie, I will say pretty good. It does make it a much lighter story than the book. And I've said this before on podcasts. I love the ending of The Witches. I guess fast forward a minute if you don't want to hear the ending. It's so touching and also extremely morbid because in The Witches, The boy gets transformed into a mouse, and his grandma has to infiltrate the world of the witches to figure out their plot and save the children, etc., etc. Well, at the end of the movie, or sorry, the end of the book, the boy is fine with staying a mouse because a mouse will only live so long, and his grandma will only live so long, and he doesn't want to live past his grandma's expiration because he loves her so much. And that is the perfect Roald Dahl ending.
And Roald Dahl, I'll skip ahead, but Roald Dahl, in his last days, really hated that Jim Henson changed the ending, and he had to be talked out of like going public with it before the film's release.
Yes, I know Roald Dahl hated that version of the movie. I'm really glad he didn't live to see the Zemeckis version, which I hear is a bad movie, just period a bad movie, regardless of the changes the Henson movie made. It's still pretty fun, and I've heard the Zemeckis one stinks. But I've also heard that essentially that version of The Witches killed Roald Dahl. It just sapped the life out of him before it came out in like 1990, and I saw that in theaters with my mom. We loved it.
And by the way, we're covering this on What a Cartoon Movie for all of our $10 and up subscribers. And if you're hearing this in the free feed, know that if you upgrade to the $10 level or just sign up for it, you can hear the entire thing in our gigantic history on this film and discussion of it right now.
Yes, at some point, if you're on the free feed, the podcast will cut off for you. We did not forget to record the rest of it. That exists at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. Sign up for $10, you'll get that, and also access all of our miniseries podcasts, over 200 episodes to date, covering things like Futurama, King of the Hill, and so many great other adult animated sitcoms. And it supports the show. We really appreciate it.
And hey, I mean, if you're going to enjoy this stop motion talk, I know you'll like hearing us talk about like The Nightmare Before Christmas and even The Corpse Bride, which we were a little cold on, but we still that's just part of the many in the What a Cartoon Movie franchise.
I'll throw out Paranorman.
Oh, that's even better, and also very connected to the or related to the production, as I learned.
And one last thing, also Chicken Run, which I feel is a superior British poultry farm stop motion feature.
There are people who worked on this movie and Chicken Run who I think agree with you.
I'm not surprised. There are like only 100 stop motion animators in existence at one time.
Yeah, so let's get into the history here, and citing some sources here. There's several out there. But there's many excellent special features on the Criterion Collection for this, including like it has a full animatic, full commentary from Anderson. There's also the book, The Making of Fantastic Mr. Fox by Wes Anderson and Michael Spector, and many great articles out there and retrospectives. Wes Anderson is, though I think he is selective of who he does interviews with, he does a lot of them, especially when promoting his most recent movie. He had a lot of new quotes in the last year about Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Okay.
And as well as many other folks who worked on the film, they talked about it too. And not to mention, there's many Dahl biographies out there. I watched a couple. There's a good one on that Criterion Collection DVD called The Fantastic Mr. Dahl. That's it's more for like an all ages audience, but then there's another one also from the BBC you can find on YouTube that is very warts and all about his family and some ups and downs on his life, I'd say. And Roald Dahl is how they keep saying it and all those things, all the special features. If you're his like wife in the 50s or his mother, you might pronounce it Rual, which is the Norwegian way of saying it, but we're going with Roll on this.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where if you say it the right way, everyone will be mad at you because it's not the way anyone else says it.
There was like clips of his first wife in the same documentary where they've been calling him Roll the whole time, and it goes like, "My husband Rule," and I was like, "What the hell?" Yeah, but
oh yeah, he does rule. Anyways.
Roald Dahl was born in 1916 and to Norwegian parents in England, and he has his childhood full of misadventures and mean teachers and bullies and corporal punishment and tasting chocolates and all of these things that would obviously form the life experiences that he would put into many of his children's books later.
Based on his books, it seems like he was tormented by overweight, ugly people.
Yes.
And also skinny, ugly people, don't forget about them. They're either endomorphic or exomorphic.
Yes, they in some way they are not normal. And of course, ugly people are evil.
Yeah. He did write like a little essay about that.
Oh, he did. Yes. And it bugs me reading his stuff that like a worse writer and person, I'd even say J.K. Rowling, like wants to imitate his writing style so much. She hates fat people too, but her descriptions of fat people can't even match the disgusting descriptions of fat people that Roald Dahl could do.
Yeah, part of the reason why I loved these books as a kid is was the gross out stuff, was the dark humor, the death, the gross out stuff, the people drinking, getting drunk, all the fun words and turns of phrase and grammatical structures I was not seeing in the American kids books I was reading.
So I think this film captures it a bit, but some of his adaptations missed the what's fun about reading his at least his children's work and some of his adult work, which I did read, but that he has amazing ways with words. Like it is his sentence construction, his choice in language, his descriptors, like that is why they're beloved. It's not just like the scenarios or characters are interesting. Like to read and experience his words is what's special about them.
Yeah, and as far as I know, unlike with J.K. Rowling, they did not Americanize his books when they published them overseas in America, in North American territories. With J.K. Rowling, they changed a bunch of turns of phrase and spellings and things like that, and names of things like H.P. Sauce. But when you're reading Roald Dahl, you're reading very British writing. I assume maybe they took the U's out of certain words just so kids wouldn't get confused, but that could be it.
I think they got less localized back when he was alive. Yeah, I think so. There's many funny stories in those documentaries from his editors, including his American editor. There's a funny story of an American editor who worked with him a lot that wanted him to tone down all the fart jokes in the BFG, and then he wrote a scene of the BFG farting in front of the Queen as his answer to being told to write fewer farts.
That sounds like him.
He was a schoolboy of upper middle class status in England, and in his first job out of college, he was working for Shell Oil in 1934. A junior executive. He said it was to travel the world. He was like, you couldn't just like fly to somewhere. And when you work for Shell Oil in the UK, you get to go to all of the wonderful colonies, Kenya, Tanzania, India, all of the benefits of UK colonialism he got to enjoy.
Oh, the British Empire, how nice. So he was a British schoolboy in this time period. Did he eat all of his meat, and did he get his pudding?
There's a few stories about him getting spanked, so I don't think so. He got the corporal punishment. I think probably him and Pink Floyd helped take down corporal punishment in the UK school system.
I hope so.
But yeah, he was going to all these places, and he would write about them later in his more adult fiction of traveling. You can read stories about his experiences of like almost being killed by snakes, and I will say, for a man born in 1916, a lot of his stories about those travels do seem to identify more with the natives there, and he's a UK colonialist. Like there's a man born over 100 years ago. He's not going to be that woke, but for his time, it reads better than other folks, I'd say.
Now, can we lump the whole United Kingdom in, or is it just the British Empire for this colonialism?
Well, boy, man, that's let's say the British Empire.
Okay, I want to make sure we're getting our terminology right before anyone gets mad.
It's true. The British Empire. It's not fair to put in Scotland in this. They're colonized too. Mm-hmm. I love that line in Train Spotting where he's like, I'm paraphrasing, he's like, oh, the fuck it, we're colonized by assholes. It sucks being Scottish because, the Brits are assholes, but the English are assholes, but we got fucking colonized by assholes. So he is traveling the world, and in 1939, he joins the Royal Air Force, the RAF, to fight the Nazis in these colonies mainly. He is stationed in Iraq and Palestine at these times. And then in 1940, he has a plane crash in Egypt that nearly kills him and leaves him in diplomat status, which posthumously the UK government even and his family kind of admit, like, well, he basically was a spy. Yeah, I mean, his job was to be a spy and do propaganda.
So total badass.
There are implications in some biographies that he was a and inspiration for James Bond. One of them. Other people say Christopher Lee, the actor Christopher Lee. Both of them were friends with Ian Fleming. And they're like, oh yeah, he was Roald Dahl was a handsome young chap. He was having fun all across the world with many beautiful ladies, and that happened when he became a spy. And he also, his first writing, he was hired by basically the propaganda office while working in Washington D.C. to write for the Saturday Evening Post, shot down over Libya, though it had a different story, but that's what it was published under, basically recounting his air crash. And people were like, wow, you're really good at writing these stories. But it was propaganda to fight against any America First folks who did not want America joining World War II on the side of the British.
I mean, that's where I'd want to be during WW2, in the cartoon making or newspaper article writing division.
Well, you have to first crash an airplane and nearly die to end up there.
I guess he earned it.
Yeah, he was a propagandist, but anti-Nazi propagandist at the time. So he was starting to write. This is where his first engagement with Hollywood and animation began. Part of his propaganda job was working in America. Like, he lived in America. He would marry an American. Like, he has a cross-continental career. He is certainly more of a British author, but his first work was published in America. I'd say at a time he was just as popular in America as he was in the UK. So also what I like about this adaptation is kind of a US-UK kind of thing, with even some characters are played by British actors, some characters are played by American actors.
Though the setting is like extremely British.
Obscenely British, yes. Yes. So this is when Dahl, one of his propaganda stories was, he thought, what about a story about gremlins who make a guy's plane crash? And what if I did that with Walt Disney? And Walt Disney was up for it. And I would say to folks, check out Gerard Scarfe, the artist who did Pink Floyd's The Wall art and worked on Hercules. He did a great 30-minute long BBC Radio investigation into the history of the Gremlins movie and how it almost got made, but then Walt Disney eventually, he found better propaganda to do. I think the South American propaganda. He's like, I want to make those movies, not Gremlins.
Yeah, like Saludos Amigos and Three Caballeros, and there's one other one too.
Yeah, though it was those ones that made him more interested than working with the British government. Also, by the end of 43, there was a feeling of like, well, it's looking like we're going to win this war, and we don't need to convince people to Americans to give a shit about British pilots. We don't care. But Gremlins was a popular book, his first children's book in 43. He talks about that Eleanor Roosevelt read it to her kids, and that he got to go to the White House and meet the president. Though also he was talking with Winston Churchill at the time, and it was kind of a spy mission too.
Sure, he had an in.
And so he's, working his way through Hollywood. He's betting a lot of like starlets. It's implied and including he marries in 1952 American actress Patricia Neal, who will go on to win an Oscar for the Paul Newman movie HUD.
All I know about that is the joke is that it makes Chud look like HUD from The Critic.
I haven't seen the movie either. I did watch a clip of her acting in it, and she is she was a great actress. No longer with us, though. Outlived him by about 17 years. And so this is when Dahl was writing a lot more adult fiction and short stories because, as you know, Bob, like there was actually a big market for publishing short stories back then in the 50s.
Yeah, so many magazines. Public transit was not completely dismantled, so more people had time to like just flip open a paperback or a periodical.
And he wrote so many classic horror, more like crime stories. I mean, his most famous adult short story probably has to be Lamb to the Slaughter, which has been made many times. The one of the woman who kills her husband with a leg of lamb.
Yes, I have heard of that one. The one adult novel I read of his is called My Uncle Oswald, and it's all about the search for a rare beetle that is the world's most powerful aphrodisiac.
Oh my. Wes Anderson, in one of his stories, said, of working on this, he said he was getting to go through Dahl's manuscripts, and he came across a rather filthy poem he wrote, and they're like, oh, please, tell us. And he's like, well, the only line I can remember is that she needs a belly full of cock, was the line he said. I was like, wow.
Well, a lot of things rhyme with cock. What a hack.
So yeah, he was becoming a very popular writer at that time in more adult circles. Hitchcock would adapt 5 of his stories into the Hitchcock Presents, directing some of them even.
Oh yeah, that was the perfect vehicle for adapting all of those short crime stories.
In fact, by the end of the 70s, the BBC got in on it themselves and did Roald Dahl's Tales of the Unexpected, a TV series that basically was just like their version of adapting those same things in the TV style.
Oh, that's right. Actually, I recently, within the past year, bought a Roald Dahl short story collection, and the cover is basically an ad for that show. And I assume the stories inside were the ones that were adapted for that show.
Yeah, the in one of the documentaries made for a British audience, they're saying, and we all remember Tales of the Unexpected. I was like, what? Did not come over here, at least that I saw.
No, it was probably on PBS when I was 4 or something. Actually, this movie has a lot of like PBS vibes to it, is what I'll call it.
Well, I mean, definitely Wes Anderson grew up watching a lot of PBS, I think, and in Masterpiece Theater, I would bet. Also, Dahl would write, like, he would write movies too. He wrote Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which was adapting somebody else's book. He wrote the 1967 Bond film, You Only Live Twice, which is a rather cheeky on his part, I'd say.
Yeah, if anything, he could improve the source material, which I love, but it is schlocky, it is deeply sexist and racist. Love is a strong word. I find it kind of interesting, I guess.
And around this time, he was doing so well as a writer that he bought his family estate in Buckinghamshire, or Buckinghamshire, however you guys say it. The estate is known as Gypsy House. That's their name of it. That's what he calls it, and that's where his writing hut was, which is much beloved by Wes Anderson. He wrote in that writing hut.
Oh, really? Wow. It sounds like a spiritual experience for him then.
And when you see Mr. Fox's study in this movie, it is made to look exactly like the writing hut. Though his wife, a Hollywood superstar, not the biggest fan of living in the quiet British countryside.
Hey, it sounds nice, but if you're used to the post-war Hollywood, boring.
And this is also when I almost feel like I'm doing the Mr. Show sketch here. Tragedy struck, Captain Tragedy. But he did have his new family had several problems. His youngest son had like an accident. Basically, his pram got hit by a taxi in New York City when he was like 2. And he had a brain injury that took him a good while to recover from. He eventually did. But so first there's that. Then their first daughter dies from measles like before she's 6. Like he was a big proponent of inoculation, so obviously a horrible man, obviously.
We do not support him. Well, you know what? We need more Roald Dahls now, especially with all the measles outbreaks happening currently.
And then also, while his wife was pregnant with another of their daughters, she had a massive stroke that nearly killed her, and a emergency surgery saved her life, but it took her years to recover, and it was a very you can imagine, Bob, that didn't make for a great relationship at that time.
Well, experiencing war and then all these hardships, I totally understand now why his books are so dark.
And I don't think it's a coincidence that at this time, when he also is becoming more of a caretaker of his children and spending more time with them than probably most British men did, the fable goes that he started becoming a bit of the like, oh, I told bedtime stories that I made up to my kids. And then eventually those kind of grew into like, why don't I just write these down? I am a writer. So that grew into James and the Giant Peach was his first in 1961. In 1964, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. 1970 saw the release of Fantastic Mr. Fox. The first cover of it in art was by an artist named Donald Chaffin, who is very different from Quentin Blake in his style. That's the version Wes Anderson grew up with, which they try to capture in this movie.
I see. Yeah, these books are not as old as I think they are. I mean, yes, they are 50 years old and older, but when I was growing up, I assumed that they were just very, very old because I saw an old man on the back cover. But Matilda is a book from the late 80s. It's not that old. That wasn't that old of a book when I was reading it in like 1990 or perhaps even 1989.
Matilda was a very new book we were reading. It's nuts to think about that how they because they feel timeless, and they were being presented by a man who, well, again, he really liked his wine, he really liked his cigarettes. Like Mr. Bean in this, or well, let's just call him Bean. The villain Bean in this is also kind of Roald Dahl in how they put him in the movie. Like,
He made me want a cider, but not a cigarette.
and so 71 also saw his first film adaptation of one of his kids' works, Willy Wonka, and he hated it. He was not a fan of that movie, not the least of which was he did not think that Gene Wilder should play Willy Wonka.
It's one of those things where I know the book is very different, but they each stand on their own ground. You know, the book is great and the Gene Wilder movie is pretty good. And then when finally someone makes the definitive adaptation, everybody hates it, or at least they don't want to
Yes.
look at it, which is the Tim Burton version. And sort of like with Stephen King's The Shining, he hated the Kubrick version, although I think he likes it now. But then later they make a direct adaptation for television. Everyone's like, get this away from me. The guy from
Yeah.
Wings? I don't think so.
1972 also that was another year for him where he started a long 11-year-long affair with his future second wife, the future Felicity Doll. She was a set designer on a commercial in England that would star Patricia Neal, and it sounded like it was very rough on his children, this because like one of his eldest daughter learned about it before her mother did, and it really screwed her up. It sounds very tough. But that Lissy Doll, as she would be known, she would become the executor of his estate, and Patricia Neal would be leaving her home, and wasn't very happy about that either. But by late in life, she's like, I can't even be mad about it anymore, whatever. Like she, in her credit, she did an interview for a documentary that Lissy Doll worked on too. So I think also after Roald Dahl died, I think she could probably easily let it go.
Time heals some wounds.
And they got married in 1983, which also I feel like if I don't talk about this, people will be like, hey, what about this? 1983 is when he had a lot of quotes that are like no two ways about it. They are anti-Semitic. But there is a bigger story to this that I would just like to dive into slightly, which is like it started with he was asked to review a book called God Cried, which was a children's book about the invasion of Lebanon that Israel did in 1982, reflecting on its war crimes from the position of one of the children who was a victim of it. It was commissioned by the Palestinian British Naim Atallah, who was the editor of the magazine. Roald Dahl really liked him. He had a special place in his heart. I'll just read this from Atallah himself, who has passed away, but he wrote an essay. Roald Dahl and I began our conversation with his asking me about which part of Palestine I was raised. He knew the country well, he added, having been stationed there as a fighter pilot for the RAF during the Second World War. So he does have like sympathy for the occupied people of Palestine. And that came through. Now, when he then wrote his essay about how reflecting on these crimes and Israel's crimes then, he was charged with anti-Semitism, and some of his Jewish friends would later reflect on it that if you accuse Roald Dahl of something, he is going to lash out at you and say, well, if you think that's anti-Semitic, and he'll say things like, even a stinker like Hitler didn't just pick on them for no reason. And he'll charge, all the Jews own the media in England, things like that are like, indefensible. Can't defend.
Yeah, it seemed like he enjoyed being provocative, but then he would go too far, even though you understand where the anger is rooted in. It was just expressed in the wrong way. But the context of these quotes is important. Of course, what he's saying is inexcusable, but you understand it's coming from an actual tragedy that he is not able to process very well.
I would definitely suggest folks read the full essay by the Palestinian British editor who has since passed away, and his explanation of working on it, especially because he faced a lot of Islamophobic reactions to publishing that essay that no one apologized to him for and was treated as just, oh, well, that's normal. Now, obviously, nothing like that would happen now.
No.
But,
We've moved on.
yes. It probably didn't help Dahl's case that then The Witches came out that same year, I think. That didn't help much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. He is using classic witch iconography, which I assume is all rooted in racism. Any kind of like, the villain has a hooked nose. Well, it's like, well, you follow the trail of clues and it eventually leads to a racial stereotype.
But yes, as he aged, that was when he actually, in his last years of life, did approve of The Witches getting adapted, Boy, what a cursed movie in '90. It makes you think witches are real and curse Jim Henson and him. But they died. They both died right after the film's release.
It is crazy. That movie, okay, so it's pretty good, I'll say. It's worth watching. Great practical effects, some great Jim Henson puppets. And it has Angelica Houston essentially playing a Morticia Addams character a year before the Addams Family movie. And I think the Addams Family movie probably had been filmed at that point because they filmed it and had to sit on it because Orion went out of business.
That's right, man. Well, that film taught me the term dogs droppings. Like my mom had to explain what that meant. That because that's what all children smell like to witches.
They still made it very British, I will say.
Yeah, it's well, because much like Wes Anderson, I do think even more so, Jim Henson was an Anglophile who loved working in England and making British things.
Oh yeah, Terry Jones wrote Labyrinth, I think.
Yes, yeah, it was a Terry. Yeah, and he often worked with British directors. Or the director of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Steve Barron, another of the many British people he worked with, who he lifted up. But and so yes, after Dahl's passing, died of a rare blood cancer, I believe it was. Then Lissy Dahl took a very strong hand on adapting his works. It was very choosy in the adaptations for a time. And one of the most popular ones before this one was 1996's James and the Giant Peach, which was the follow-up for Henry Selick from Nightmare Before Christmas, which is important to mention, too, because Henry Selick would later work with Wes Anderson.
That's right. And that's an interesting movie. Maybe we'll cover it one day. 20 minutes of it is live action, by the way. It's only about an hour's worth of stop motion. The strangest thing about it is, upon revisiting it so many years later, is realizing that Randy Newman does the score and the songs, and he is not a good fit at all for that movie. I guess he was just working at Disney because he did the Toy Story soundtrack the year before.
Yeah, but I haven't seen that movie since theaters. I'd be up for checking it out again on a podcast too. But so yes, Wes Anderson. Let's talk about him. He was born in 1969, the same year that Roald Dahl started writing Fantastic Mr. Fox. So that's Wes Anderson brings up that funny timing about it. And that he also, Wes Anderson was saying this a bunch in the initial interviews, and now he basically says, it's relatively true that Fantastic Mr. Fox was the first book I got among other Roald Dahl books. So it is a beloved book to him.
And he based his life on Mr. Fox's teachings.
Mainly the digging. He really loved the digging. He loves digging. And yes, Wes Anderson, born in Texas, he was the middle son of an upper middle class family with an artistic mother and a business minded father. They got a divorce when he was 8. He's a gifted kid. Obviously, none of these things would be aspects of his future movie.
Yes. Yeah, it's all falling into place.
Yes, yeah, it's true. He was a gifted kid who got into a fancy school partially on merit, I'd say, not just the money. And though I will also say, to steal another one from Will Sloan and Luke Savage, when they reviewed The French Dispatch, they both had a good point that while he loves the work of the French New Wave directors like Godard and Truffaut, especially with Godard, he seems to be unaware of the actual left-wing politics of Godard, and when he's imitating it in The French Dispatch, he has no political weight to anything that's happening in it.
Yeah. I mean, I have not seen all of his movies, but I guess you could say they're very apolitical because there's so much involved in personal drama that the larger outside world is often irrelevant.
If somebody is like a protester or a leftist or living outside society, it often is treated as like, well, yeah, this is like the fashionable thing a rich person did. Like it's not done for actual political reasons. Like usually it is like a well-off person who's doing it just because they can, Again, I get it. It's his childhood too. I can understand where it's coming from. But and his younger brother, who would draw a lot of stuff with him, Eric Chase Anderson, he plays the younger brother's type character in this movie, Christopherson. So I mean, come on, like
Oh, I love that guy. I love that character.
Yeah.
The kid foxes are very cute, and I believe his brother is the guy who drew all of the original DVD covers, which is why that new box set irritates me.
Because they're gone, right?
Yeah, it's just a bunch of boring. It looks like a bunch of boring books. Great. Make it look like Mr. Fox. Make it look like the original illustrations. It just is so boring. Buy books if you want books on your shelf. That's my argument here.
And in his high school days, he went to the prestigious St. John's School in Texas, which has alumni that include Ken Keeler and Elizabeth Holmes.
Wow, classmates with Keeler?
You know, he might have been. They're both in their late 50s now. I
Hmm.
wonder. But the most important point, you don't need to look up what St. John's School looks like because it both served as the inspiration for the school in Rushmore, and then he filmed Rushmore there.
Oh, okay.
So,
I know a lot of it was filmed on location. I didn't know it was at the school he attended.
and then he went to the University of Texas in Austin in 1989, and he was roommates there in his freshman year with a young man named Owen Wilson.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow, indeed. And Owen Wilson's dad is an ad executive and a TV exec, too, in the Texas area. So this would also be the first of Wes's many productive befriendings of talented rich kids.
That's how you got to do it.
At least they are talented. I have to identify that they are rich kids. But Owen Wilson's a good actor and also a great writer who wrote great movies with Wes Anderson. I can't deny it.
Yeah, it's almost like being rich makes an environment in which your child can be very creative and have access to so many resources.
It's true, yeah. Now, there are lots of rich kids who are like just trash and garbage, but sometimes being rich lets you actually explore your talents and develop them instead.
Mhm.
So, yes, they did goofy things when living together, including staging a break-in into their home and pretending they broke into their own home, which then they're like, hey, that could be a movie. So they did a 13-minute short film in 1992 called Bottle Rocket. But, of course, Wes, he doesn't want to be on screen like, say, Kevin Smith. So Owen's like, I have a brother who can play basically you in the movie, and that's how Luke Wilson gets cast in movies, too.
The cheaper Owen Wilson.
Isn't it weird that in Bottle Rocket they're not playing brothers, but they're kind of sort of brothers in the movie? They have like a brotherhood thing, but they're not brothers.
Yeah, I only saw it recently for the first time, and that part is distracting.
So the short film's getting a lot of buzz at the same time as like this is the era of like Soderbergh and Tarantino and Kevin Smith and Richard Linklater. Like it's a time of opportunity for Gen X white guys to start making movies.
Very funny that at one point Kevin Smith was on the same platform as Wes Anderson and Tarantino and like Spike Lee.
Yes, you're right. Spike Lee, that should be included with them too, though he was like before them, and I think had less advantages, I'll say.
And now, like, Kevin Smith is making Snoogans Part 4, The Return of Brody. You can only buy it via NFT at his Snoogan store.
If you think Wes Anderson has become too insular in his works, then you have not been exploring the later works of Kevin Smith.
Yeah, I'm glad Kevin Smith is alive, but he's only interested in selling movies to one very specific kind of person.
And so Wes Anderson's entry into Hollywood also has a lot in common with The Simpsons, because just like how super producer Polly Platt told James L. Brooks, hey, Life in Hell is a cool comic, Polly Platt told James L. Brooks, this Bottle Rocket short film looks really cool. I think we should do something with this guy.
Yeah, I recall upon watching it, Bottle Rocket is a Gracie Films production.
Yeah, we talked about this a lot in the Critic episode, but short version is that Columbia Pictures signed James L. Brooks to an incredible deal with Gracie Films that James L. Brooks could basically make anything, and not only himself, but could produce films too, as long as they cost under $20 million. Apparently, they could basically make whatever movie they wanted for a time. And Polly Platt, who also sort of discovered Cameron Crowe, she's like, oh, this is the next Cameron Crowe guy. And I think for Wes Anderson, who being a major cinephile who loves Peter Bogdanovich's work, to work with the super producer who made all of the good Peter Bogdanovich movies in Polly Platt was very exciting for him too. So I suggest folks listen to the great You Must Remember This podcast series on Polly Platt's unpublished memoir. But from episode 9 of it, she details how she was like, Owen and Luke Wilson are movie stars. At the very least, James, we need to hire them to get in on these guys early. And Wes Anderson could have gone to Yale to get his PhD in philosophy, but he instead chose to make Bottle Rocket. That was
Good choice.
Yeah. And Bottle Rocket was a complete film school for him. They were total amateurs who wrote a script that was basically like a novel, and Polly Platt basically gave them a film school for over 2 years to make that movie into an actual movie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love it, but I did enjoy parts of it, and it is a very nice calling card that is nice a nice preview of where he will end up. Although you can see that without the budget and the experience, things are not as controlled as they are in his 21st century film. So cameras will follow people.
Yes.
And
Move.
things will be moving, and things will be like portrayed from different angles that you will never see in Wes Anderson. So I kind of find that the earlier rougher films a lot more interesting. So like I'm kind of locked in with Bottle Rocket and Rushmore, a movie I saw again recently.
You know, the Bottle Rocket bit of stalking a domestic worker all day who can't even speak your language, like that's the part I'm like, boy, that's not aged great.
Yeah, that's an element of the film where the one character falls in love with the worker at the hotel, and it's all fine. It all works out. It's great.
Yep.
In fact, if you have a crush on someone who is working at your hotel, pursue it.
Yep. Don't. Well, it probably helps to look like Luke Wilson.
Yeah, 96 Luke Wilson is pulling down every domestic worker around him.
So yes, he basically goes to like film school and learns how to make movies. For a first movie, Bottle Rocket I think is pretty great, and you can see how it's also like the most Tarantino-y of his movies because it is like a crime movie kinda.
Yeah, I think that probably helped get it made. Sort of like how a lot of directors start with horror. I think that's why Tarantino started with crime as well. Just like these are cheap and dirty, and they're immediately will grab you with the idea of like, oh, a big crime. How do they do it? How do they escape from it?
And so he's working on this at the Gracie offices, like during seasons 4, 5, and 6 of The Simpsons. Like, so he's passing by these people. It's why a classic Simpsons writer is in this movie.
Yes. I mean, can we talk about that?
Well, this is when he befriended Wally Wolodarski, so I think it's worth bringing up now. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess Wally Wolodarski was on the way out. I feel like he probably left Gracie and The Simpsons before any bottle rocketing was happening because he leaves, I'm going to assume, in like 92. He's one of the first people out the door with Jay Kogan.
Yeah, and him and Kogan had like an overall deal, but so I actually did ask John Vitti about this, if he remembers it, and I would love to pester Wally Wolodarski someday with questions myself, but John Vitti said he did recall in the early 90s when Polly Platt was part of the big Gracie deal, she had like lunch with all of the original Simpsons writers, like one-on-one, asking for movie ideas. He figures that Wally had that same deal, and that's when I think Polly Platt maybe connected Wolodarski and Anderson on that. This is what Vitti said. My assumption has always been that they met during the development of Bottle Rocket, and Wes Anderson correctly identified Wally as the coolest person of all the Simpsons writers.
Otto himself, the guy who Otto is designed after. Now, I think a missing piece of the puzzle here, something I mentioned before, is that Wally Wolodarski wrote and directed his own kind of bottle rockety movie that went nowhere, very unavailable. It is the movie Cold Blooded, starring Jason Priestley as a hitman. No one should know about this movie. I only know about it because of 90210. And very small movie, didn't make any waves. No one has heard about it, but it's him kind of doing a Wes Anderson move a year before the theatrical release of the Bottle Rocket feature. And then Wally Wolodarski goes on to direct Sorority Boys and eventually falls in with a much hipper crowd.
I think Wolodarski's better off being just like muse or like sort of co-writer. Like he never has a real writing credit, I don't think, on any Anderson film, but he's so involved in the production, like in the early days, that I really just think he is like he's being a Simpsons rewrite writer on Anderson films a lot of the time. So yes, this is what begins their relationship during the production on it, and Wolodarski is pretty much in every Anderson film after this in one way or another.
So if you like him on commentaries, you'll love him as the possum in Fantastic Mr. Fox.
He's also in the Darjeeling Limited as the man with alopecia who plans their trips. I forget his character name, and he is an unnamed referee in Rushmore. If you remember when Max Fisher has to sub in the a wrestling match, like the referee there is Wolodarski.
Oh, very nice.